And hello and welcome to the session this afternoon. I hope you have already had a great morning. My name is Ian Scholar. I'm the head of the CIPS Business Study Centre at the Chartered Institute of Procurement and Supply. I've got two very special guests with me and I'm really excited to introduce them. I've got Amanda Wood from BAE Systems. She'll tell you a bit more about herself a bit later on. And I've got Christophe Quiquempoix, and he's from Schneider Electric, and he'll tell you a bit more about himself a bit later on as well. I'm sure you've all got used to this now, but please put any messages or please use the chat. If you've got any questions, please use the Q&A, and I will do my best to keep an eye on it during this session and pass those questions on to our lovely guests. So without any further ado, I'm going to start off with a little question I've put together, and as part of this question, I'm going to ask the guests to tell you a little bit about themselves as well, so a bit about their backgrounds and how they got into the role that they've got into as well. But to start off with, both of you, Amanda, Christophe, what motivated you to focus on or even advocate for sustainable procurement? Amanda, would you like to go first?
Yes, of course, no problem. Thanks, Ian, and hello, everybody. Great to be with you. First of all, I am not a sustainability professional, but I have an absolute passion for it. So my background is supply chain and logistics, both in the military and also in the corporate world. And a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to take up this brand new role in sustainability. And the thing that excited me most is there are very few jobs or careers where you can really make a difference to business performance, but also do something that is really impactful and purposeful. And for me, that's what motivated me to take up this role, because there's a real crossover into my personal life as well in terms of values and, the kind of what I want to leave for my children and my grandchildren. And I think there are very few roles there that provide you that all-encompassing opportunity, and sustainability is one of them. I just think it's so important for a business, but also, for life in general. So, yeah, I feel very, very lucky to have this opportunity.
Thanks, Amanda. I think a lot of people probably can see themselves in what you've just been talking about, actually. What about yourself, Christophe? What got you into advocating for sustainable procurement?
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody around the globe here. So I would also, like Amanda, I would not qualify myself as a professional for sustainability, but what gets me into it, it goes back years back. When I was a kid, it started to me by the fact, and I'm still like this, I hate to waste food, I hate to waste energy, I hate to waste water, I hate to waste my own energy, my own time. I think it started by this, and gradually looking around. I've been always going often close to the nature, backpacking a lot in the mountains here in Grenoble, but around the globe as well. I realized the change that was happening, just looking to the ice melting all around the mountains here. And so I got basically into sustainability by saying, what can I do myself? One practical example, it started with very small things in my daily life, using a bicycle, even I'm living in the mountains, but to go doing my grocery 6 kilometers away. I built a house in the mountains in which I put every technology existing back then, that was more than 15 years ago. And gradually, it became more and more important for me, and I've been in procurement for now 28 years probably, and I said to myself, I need to combine those basically my value with where I spend most of my wake time, which is at work. And this is the reason why I joined Schneider Electric, because the company has been for now 20 years deeply involved into sustainability. It's a core of the business, it's the DNA. And I said, this is a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to combine my value and my values and my work. So I started at Schneider Electric as procurement VP, and gradually I took over this sustainable procurement job since about 3 years now. And as if you think about it, and this is true for carbon emission, but it's true for social and human rights, if you look around in a company, which function can impact the most sustainability, probably procurement will be one of the first one on the list here. I mean, speaking about carbon emission, if we look in Schneider Electric, if I'm comparing scope 1 and scope 2 versus the scope 3 upstream, so basically the emission of what we buy, there is a ratio of 33, which means scope 1 and 2 is 33 times smaller than the scope 3 upstream, that the emission of what we buy. It gives you one number just to substantiate and to prove what I was saying. But if I'm going on the other pillar, in the social and human right pillar, the same is true. With our decision, with what we push into our supplier, we can influence the life of millions of employees at our suppliers. So people often say it's the responsibility of procurement to drive sustainability. I say, no, I disagree. It's our duty to drive sustainability. I mean, because we own that in our daily decision.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Christophe. That's a really good thing to say. I mean, we're seeing some fantastic feedback already in the chat about what you're saying. So, you know, you already hitting the mark, I think, which is really important. And I've been advocating for sustainable procurement in all the time I've been at CIPS, which is, you know, nearly 20 years now. And we've done a lot of activities around this topic, and some of the conversations we've been having with you have been fantastic. And I think what this session is about is very much about thinking about culture, embedding that first, and then moving forward together, not just with yourselves, but with your suppliers as well. So, and we'll talk a bit more about that a bit later on as well. I think it'd be really nice to start off by getting a bit of interaction. So let's do the first poll, Deirdre. If you could get that up for us, and then we'll see what people are already saying. So does your organisation provide you with positive feedback when you're out there advocating for sustainable initiatives? Good question. So let's see where it goes. Brilliant. I've just voted myself. We can vote as well, which is excellent.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, we can vote ourselves, which is really good. So I already see that well, there's some really positive yeses there. Excellent. And sadly, we're seeing a few no's, but mostly yeses, which is really nice. Nice. Amanda, would you be expecting to see that? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's probably a reflection of reality, Ian. I mean, we're on a journey here, and this is an evolution. And for some companies, some people, hopefully the majority, which is what the poll says, you know, this is gaining momentum. This is positive. People are connecting with it. But there are still some that need to go on that journey to have that mindset shift. And so, you know, I think if I saw 0% at no, I would be very surprised, but it helps us. And this is great. You know, the pendulum is swinging. I suspect if we did this 5 years ago, the numbers would be very, very different. So I think this is actually a really positive message, but also a reminder that we're not there yet, and we've got to keep going.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, I would agree as well. And it's events like this that really help with that, I think. Christophe, any thoughts, any reflections from what you're seeing on the poll?
Happy on one side, same as Amanda. Now, I hope that if we could take this poll at the end of the day, I hope that the 12% will go closer to the 0%. I mean, again, as I said, it's really our duty to drive sustainability, and it starts with us. I mean, we don't have to hide behind anybody. It really starts with us. We can make a difference, each of us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Christophe, as well. We can take the poll away now. That'd be good. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thanks. So just to follow on from that, really, and I'm going to ask you, Amanda, first of all, on this. So do you think there's any common misconceptions or barriers that organisations are facing in adopting sustainable procurement?
Yeah, thanks, Ian. It's a good question. And I think we've got to have the backdrop or the context that our global supply chains, no matter which industry we're in or which, supply chain we use, are probably the most fragile and volatile than they've been in most of our working lives for various geopolitical, natural disasters, economic conditions. And so, I summarize that when I talk to people by saying it's tough. It is tough just to do our daily bread as procurement professionals around, getting goods on time, to budget, right first time. And then we have this wrapper of sustainability. And I think there is a common misconception that in order to progress our sustainability ambitions, it's got to be to the detriment of either time, cost, or quality. And I talk about the triangle of, usually we have the triangle of time, cost, and quality. And depending on your project, depending on what you're doing, that triangle is never equilateral. There's always a bias or a skewing one way. And that just needs to either become a square or just have a wrapper of sustainability around it. We don't need to stop, and we shouldn't stop doing our basics around, getting the goods when we need them at the right price, right first time. But we can still make incremental progress in starting to embed sustainability along the way and not at the expense of. So I think, rather than make this revolutionary, the misconception is that, it has to be at the expense of something we're already doing. And I absolutely don't believe that to be the case. I think we can do it all in a measured and considered way.
Thanks, Amanda. I think picking up on the chat, I think Caldwell would agree with you on the chat because you're talking about there, and in fact both Caldwell and Andrew were talking about these competing interests across the business, and I think that's interesting, isn't it? So different people wanting those different interests, which is essentially what you were talking about there, but bringing in that sustainability wraparound, which I think is important. So what do you think?
Yeah. Could I just come back onto Billy's point that in there around very little interest if there are increased costs. I resonate with that, and I think you are completely right in calling that out. One thing that I found useful is doing that the whole of life benefit analysis. So we tend to think in year. Most of our financial plans are in year, so we tend to think about all the cost, and then the benefits usually happen over a life cycle. And so we found it really helpful to map out those benefits, both financial and non-financial, over the entire life cycle, not just at that point of purchase.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amanda. Christophe, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I want to insist on to me, it's really bothers me, I would say, to some level, when people are coming to you and say sustainability is going to cost. Let's first look into the glass half full, so to the positive. And I'll go very concretely in some example. Recycled material, let's take thermoplastic, mechanically recycled, cost less than virgin. So, this is pushing away this comment about opposing, I would say, sustainability and cost. Solar panels, same, you have a positive ROI. There are plenty of solutions to reduce the carbon emission from companies providing service to transform the CAPEX into OPEX, which leads also to cost savings. But the same goes into, again, on the human rights and the social aspect. Often, we've been launching a program, decent work program. One of the elements is driving living wage with our suppliers. I often get the feedback, if I have to pay my employees more, it will cost you more. No, we have plenty of arguments to show that paying more to people will improve the retention of people. You're going to have more productive employees. You're going to have more happy employees. And also, what is critical when people keep on opposing this, it's to go back as well to what should be the main focus of a company, focusing on the customer. And at least for us, and I guess that this is for a lot of companies, we're doing sustainability not only because it's good for the planet, not because it's in our DNA, but also our customers are requiring this much more now than yesterday. Now, our investors as well. are requiring that much more than yesterday. So, I mean, other example I could give, because that's we have concrete example in Schneider Electric, when people are opposing sustainability and quality. No, it often goes hand in hand. When you design a product, when you choose a material, it often goes hand in hand. So I think I'm not dismissing that this pushback is happening, but we should kill that by showing concrete example where this is absolutely not true. Now, of course, there are other things where sustainability would cost, and it will take time. But, and I'll conclude on that, and it's not me that has said that sentence, but the cost of inaction is much, much bigger than the cost of acting now.
How interesting that is. One of the things that I thought was quite interesting, Larissa picked up on something, and quite a few people have put our fingers up saying that we believe that top management sees this all in a different way. And the other thing that Larissa's mentioned there is that there's a clear gap between the young and the older generation. Do you think is that a truth? And if so, why? Amanda, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So I was one of the ones that actually stuck my like against that, because I agree. I was at a graduate forum for BA Systems last week, a couple of weeks ago, sorry, and it is very clear to me that the generations that are coming through now, they are choosing to work for companies who have a robust and an authentic sustainability agenda, and that they can see evidence that the company, it is embedded as part of their culture. It's not a project, it's not a marketing campaign, it's not meeting a compliance requirement. It is actually important to their culture as a company that they are doing something. And I think depending on what layer of the organization you're talking to, depends on how they connect with it. Now, I think everybody connects with it. It's just remembering who we're talking to and what's the connection they have. Is it a financial analyst? Is it, the financial ratings? Is it that true kind of purpose, if you will? So I do think it is right that, and, depending on the ages, depending on the generations, and I'm touching on all the buttons I'm not allowed to, and I recognize that, but it's true. I think the younger we go, there is a sliding scale of importance to individuals. And if you want to attract really good talent coming through, you need to have a really strong sustainability story as a company.
I fully agree with what you say, Amanda. I mean, if you want to bring in and to attract talents, you need to have and not a greenwashing message, a true program about sustainability. I actually see that with my own sons. I have two sons, 22 and 25. They don't want to work in a company that is not engaged in sustainability. I mean, they have total different position and work than I have, but in their respective field, they are extremely clear. A company that doesn't care about sustainability, they don't want to spend any time there. That's it.
Totally agree. Yeah, Christophe, I'm the same. I've got young lads, and they're exactly the same. They will not stay there if the company is not thinking about sustainability. Which is good.
Ian, could I pick up on one more comment in the chat, if that's okay?
Of course, yeah, please.
So Jay has put a comment in the chat around, should we use the triple bottom line? And my answer to that is, I think absolutely. And even moving on from that, the double materiality, if anyone's used that before, I think is really, really powerful, because it's pretty clear to me that, for some people who feel extraordinarily passionate about this, there is a compelling case that it's the right thing to do. But we have to accept that we all work in a business. Businesses are not, they're not charitable function. They actually have to make money for shareholders. And I think the greatest success comes when you can balance, what is it doing for people, planet and profit? And although we don't quite go back to that triple bottom line statement, I think the double materiality, which shows how is it important through an ESG lens, how is it important through a business lens, is crucial to to thinking about these new initiatives.
Brilliant, thanks, Amanda. And there's a question following on a little bit from that, actually, to Christophe. We were talking about the cost of inaction. So the question to you from Charlotte is, how can you make that cost of inaction more tangible? How do you do that?
There have been some experts in climate change, for example, that have made those computation on some specific items, like the rising of sea level, how much property that this will destroy on the coast. Like I don't remember the number, but this study was specifically on the impact on New York City, as an example. It's just huge compared to the cost of trying to mitigate the temperature rise. The same goes again on the social side as well. I mean, just imagine the number of people we will have to move. I mean, the climate refugee we're going to be creating, if I may say, by not acting today. So I'm not saying it's free today, but waiting one day more and 1 week more is going to cost just more to address it.
Interesting. Thank you. Thanks, Christophe. So, following on from all the things we've been talking about there, then how do we effectively integrate sustainability into organizations' business strategy? How do we go about that? So if you've got any top tips, Christophe, do you want to start with that?
Well, ideally, and I say ideally because if that doesn't happen, you should not just wait and stop, but it needs to start at the top. It really needs to start at the head of the company, taking a stand on sustainability, taking commitment, and delivering on those commitments. I would say this is one of the first thing. The second thing would be to take commitments, but keep yourself honest with those commitments. What I mean by that is it's good to take commitment for in 5 years, and you don't speak about it after until the 5 years is coming. No, I mean, what we do in Schneider Electric, we took sustainable commitment, 11 global, 1 local, out of which, by the way, 4 are driven by procurement. But we report every quarter when we report our financial results, we report on the progress on those elements. So the decarbonization, the green material, sustainable packaging, decent work, we report. Not only this, we keep everybody accountable to this. So every employee that has a variable pay, a bonus, their bonus is impacted by the performance on those. So this makes, I mean, people are not working for money only. That's not what I'm saying. But at least it shades lights, it helps me in my company, in Schneider Electric, because when I approach R&D to accelerate on qualifying a green material or to help me to decarbonize more, I don't have to explain that this program is important. They know it. It's in their bonus. It's communicated on a quarterly basis. But then if I drill down, and you have to stop me because I'm passionate about that. So, but if I drill down into procurement, we made it very visible at all levels. So we have 1,500 procurement employees in Schneider Electric. Everybody has that in their objective as well. When we do a scorecard review, we start with sustainability. When we do a quarterly business review, we start with sustainability. It's very simple things, but instead of having this ripple down at the end of the meeting, squeeze between the end and the time remaining, we start with this. Before we speak about quality, before we speak about supply, before we speak about productivity. It's a simple thing to implement. I tell you, it works.
Thanks, Christophe. Amanda, there's a question sort of following on from that Annabelle's written here. What would you suggest if the top is semi-invested? They want to do more, but don't want to spend much more, but will still prioritise the business ops. And Annabelle is head of ESG, so it's a constant push and pull, she says. So
yeah,
what do you do?
Yeah, I feel your pain, Annabelle, sometimes. And again, probably a common situation. And something I would suggest is when you're thinking about your ESG initiatives and when you're thinking about pitching them, I always try and tie them to a non-ESG business objective. So, you know, for example, at BAE, we have our highest recruitment numbers last year, and we need to get even more through the door this year. And so I always try and tie the data points around employee engagement, around attrition, around recruitment, so attraction as a company, to ESG activities that we want to do. So it's, how do you link that and go, actually, this isn't just an ESG benefit? Because we can sit here now and go, well, that's pretty obvious to us because we live and breathe this stuff. But actually, it might help your board or your exco if you make that connection. And so I always, as well, try and team up with somebody that's non-ESG. And again, that's really powerful when you're presenting a joint business case. Is, you know, we're not just doing this to progress our ESG agenda. We're doing this because there's a business need, and this enables that business need. And that's how I've managed to get pennies before, if it helps.
Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely key. And I was again yesterday at, you know, we organize regular decarbonization events with our suppliers, and here it was an event in France. And I had the blunt question from one of the suppliers, say, what do I do if my executive, my CEO doesn't care? And exactly what you say, Amanda. I mean, my answer is tied it with another objective. And when we speak about decarbonization, I always tell my suppliers, start with energy efficiency. With one bullet, you hit two target, you hit bottom line and decarbonization. And that gets people into it. It helps to, you know, start the movement, break the inertia around sustainability.
Brilliant. We have a question linked to that. Is what do you think about forest carbon credits? Any thoughts? No? One for another time? Can you hear me?
Yes, but can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what do you think about forest carbon credits? Have you got any thoughts on that?
Forest carbon credit, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Planting trees?
Forest carbon credits, I believe that's what they mean.
No,
Yeah.
it's definitely not something we're pushing, because it's, I mean, I'll give my own Christophe's opinion on it. It's kind of giving the right to do bad by cleaning yourself by buying those credits. So I personally don't like those at all. And we're not recommending those at all.
I agree with you, Christophe.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. That was really useful as well. I've got another question here that I just wanted to quickly ask, which had come up just a minute ago. Does the organisation apply a shadow ICP into the procurement process? That was a question. Is it either of you thoughts on that?
I mean, I can start, Amanda. So we are starting to do that on CapEx investments, but what we are working aggressively on right now is to introduce ICP on all the parts and services we buy. Now, to do that, again, we need to go step by step. To do that, it means you need to have, when you speak about material, you need to have product carbon footprint. Product carbon footprint is much more complicated, much more difficult to compute, to manage, to share in terms of data than the global emission of a company. So we need to go really step by step. You know, the original question that we're discussing here is how to integrate this effectively into procurement and the business strategy. One thing I forgot to mention is that you need to meet the supplier where they are. You need to make the first step achievable for everybody to embark into decarbonization, if we speak about decarbonization, but the same goes for decent work. And making this first step achievable is maybe starting slower than we could be, but it's much more efficient, and it's accelerating in the next phase of your program. So this is extremely critical. So this is why, back to ICP, and I'm closing here. We started launching a decarbonization program with suppliers focusing on their entire emissions, operational emission, which means the scope 1 and 2. We now aggressively working on defining a program around PCF, product carbon footprint, in which we will then to provide to the procurement people all the information they need to make the right decision on what to buy. We will be introducing the ICP into that scheme. So it's been worked on. That's the short answer to your question.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that. I mean, a lot of what we're talking about here as well is about making sure that we start to get sort of change hearts and minds across the supply chain.
Yeah.
And I think it's well worth us talking about collaboration for a minute. So, you know, how are you changing and collaborating with other organizations or other stakeholders, whether internal or external, to make sure that we can embed and promote the whole thinking behind sustainable procurement? How do you do that across your supply chains? Amanda, do you want to say what you've been up to?
Yes, sure, no problem. So I think the first thing for me is we are part of one ecosystem. And it's clear in my mind that we can't succeed alone or individually. And actually, you know, this is a non-competitive space. This is something we should all be working on together. And indeed, I think it's really important that we do work on it together, particularly when we think about suppliers, because, you know, I said before, it's tough out there at the moment in supply chains. And if we're adding on layers of complexity, additional requirements, and they're all disparate, but we're all using a similar supplier in the industry or the same supplier, you know, that's very challenging. And so what we do is try and join up so far as possible with industry groups. So the CIPS Aerospace and Defence Procurement Group is one of our key vehicles, and I chair that group. And one of our 3 work streams is around sustainable procurement. And what are we going to do as an industry? And there are about 19 big aerospace and defence contractors that sit on that group. What are we going to do in terms of emissions data standard, in terms of how we ask suppliers for that information, where we store that information, how we use it, what kind of standard we use? When we think about how do we help the small business community part of our supply chain, how can we join up and help them with this journey? But also those suppliers in our supply chain that are ahead of us, how do we learn from them? Because, you know, we might be the biggest companies as it relates to revenue or employees, but we do not have all the answers. And there are suppliers out there that have some really, really good knowledge and experience. And we need to make sure that we have a vehicle to learn from, and that we can capture that. And so, you know, we join up as an industry, but we also join up with the customer. So I think it's important, if we think about that basic value chain of, you know, customer, supplier, supply chains, etc., that feed into the part of the supplier, we've all got to have that common objective. And so for me, it starts right at the top of the contract and what you're trying to do, and making sure you've got your common objectives that flow the whole way through. So yeah, I think the more we can join up, the more we can do together, the more we co-create solutions. It is absolutely imperative. Nobody's got time to be doing this individually. So the more we work together, the more we listen to each other, the more we learn, the more we share. I think that's a real recipe for success.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I love that. If I may add, you know, everybody heard that sentence that to go fast, go alone, and to go further, go together. And when we speak about collaboration, I put it in 4 different levels. There is the collaboration internally that you have to initiate. And when I say internally, I mean, for us, it means collaboration with the experts in the company, the corporate environmental team, the corporate human rights team, but also the people, if we speak about decarbonization, the people that have decarbonized our own entities. They have wonderful, concrete, credible story to tell to our suppliers. Then you have the collaboration with the suppliers. I mean, we've been discussing, I'm not going to dwell on this one, but it's also often listen to suppliers and share best practices among them, among us, because some of them have wonderful stories. Then the collaboration that you mentioned, Amanda, which I'm jealous on it, but it's collaboration among industry. I mean, industry coalition, putting different customers, different companies that share a good same supplier base to basically address sustainability altogether. This is going to be key moving forward. It's something that if we want to accelerate, it's absolutely going to be key. I'm trying to work into that direction with some of my colleagues in the industry. And then, as you mentioned, as the fourth level, it's collaboration with your customers, because we all suppliers and customers of each other to some level. And I was recently in a discussion on how to address the scope 3 downstream. One of the key levers to address the downstream, which is even less controllable, I would say, than the upstream, would be to combine the effort between supplier and customer to work together hand in hand to address it.
Thanks, Christophe. Andrew, I'm hoping we've answered your question that you put in the Q&A, but if we haven't, ask us another question. Leonardo, we haven't forgotten about you. I'm just going to bring you in a bit later on, and we'll answer that question as well, which I think will be good. How do you get your suppliers then to to align with you across your own sustainability goals? Practically, how do you do that? Christophe, do you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, I may repeat a little bit myself. It's really meeting the suppliers where they are. And it's the key word in this. It's about, again, collaboration. You don't have to address sustainability as yet another requirement. You don't have to address it with a stick. But sustainability, we're going to be in that relationship with our suppliers for the long run. It's not something that in 5 years, in 2 years, is going to be done. We can move to something else. No, it's something that it's there to last, because we have so many topics. I would even not say challenge, but topics to address. So that is key. It's the spirit on how to address, and really saying to your suppliers and demonstrating to your suppliers that you are supporting them into that. And let's give an example on the audit due diligence program that we're doing in Schneider Electric to remove the ESG risk, as an example. So auditing is one thing, identifying the non-conformity is another thing. But when the work really starts, is solving those non-conformity with the suppliers, and not just saying you have non-conformity, we disengage and we go wash our hands and leaving the company, because you don't solve anything by doing that. So it's providing a support infrastructure for your supplier. And by the way, that you don't have to create it. There is plenty of material. Just, for people here around this call, you obviously know about SPP. It's a wonder mine of information. You can find a lot of things there, and there is other public things that are available. You don't have to invent that support infrastructure. You can leverage the best of what is existing out there and adapt it to your suppliers. But to close on this is really to work hand in hand with your supplier to achieve those objectives. Now, you need to sometimes to put a little bit of incentive in it, and a lot of incentive in it, but using the stick as a last resort, I would say.
Very good. Thanks, Christophe. That's brilliant. Amanda, have you got sort of top 3 tips to give to anybody, about how do you help suppliers to be successful in that?
Yeah, so top 3. By the way, I agree with everything Christophe says. I don't advocate the stick. I know you need it, but it needs to be there almost as your safety net. But I don't advocate the stick. I think the carrot and collaboration is key. My top 3 tips are engage with suppliers. So that is number 1, and take them on the journey with you and go on the journey with them. So this isn't it's not a typical supply-customer relationship when we think about it. It's got to be a partnership. And so first tip is engage and listen and understand and co-create the journey that you're going to go on together for mutual benefit. And that's my second tip is create mutually beneficial objectives. This should be less about a supplier wanting to please you as a customer, and more around something that you both identify with that will help both of you and is beneficial to both of you. So kind of going on that journey together. And my third thing is, this is evolutionary, not revolutionary. And this can feel, and I've seen it for suppliers, this can feel massive and overwhelming. And the result of that is they don't take that first really tiny step. And so I think be very mindful about the pace at which you move and the steps that you take along the way, so that, you know, it's better to move forward a meter in a year than try and move forward 10 kilometers and not go anywhere. So that would be my top three.
Thanks for that, Amanda. What we'll do is we're going to do another poll. We put this poll in so that you can all see who you are collaborating with in this area. I already might give you some ideas. So if we can bring the poll up, Deirdre. Who are you collaborating with? There we go. And you can pick more than one. And that is for this in sustainable procurement. So I would be interested to see. Right. We've seen quite a lot of suppliers already. Some NGOs, which is interesting. Some competitors, that'll be interesting.
That's always a point of tension, I think, Ian.
Yeah, exactly. That's an interesting one. Do you collaborate with your competitors, Amanda?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Nice.
And it's really interesting. So recognise that it's a global audience, so I won't labour the point too much. But, you know, in the UK, we have the UK Social Value Act, which effectively means that for all government procurements, it is a minimum of 10% of scoring criteria is applied to priorities. And although it's called the Social Value Act, one of the 3 priorities is addressing climate change. So it does actually cover, believe it or not, ESG. And so you have to be careful, because while we say this is a non-competitive space, actually you can win business with the government, with the UK government, by progressing your agenda. And so I think it's okay to have that tension. You've just got to make sure you don't completely shut out your competitors.
I think that's really interesting, actually. And the question that Leonardo asked earlier on was about thinking about changing the culture within purchasing. What are the pillars to encourage buyers to think socially in their categories of spend? Any thoughts on that? Either of you, Christophe, Amanda?
So I think socially, so look after social value for our business. I think this is about what positive impact can you have either on your people, your suppliers' people, or the communities in which you operate. And again, this is another employee engagement piece. People want to do good, and you know, at BAE we spend more than £14 billion a year with suppliers, and we've got to make sure we generate the most value out of that £14 billion, and that's not just fiscal value. And so there is a lot of good that can come from, you know, community investments. We often say, what is important to us, we would like to be important to our suppliers. So, for example, the Armed Forces Covenant. We are a gold partner of the Armed Forces Covenant, and we ask our suppliers to support that by making their own, you know, relevant level of pledge to the Armed Forces Covenant. So I think something to help buyers think about is think about what's important to your company from a social perspective, and then try and translate that out to your suppliers. Brilliant.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm just really conscious of time because we're going to be wrapping up in about 5 minutes or so. So can I just finish off with, you know, one of the things that people are interested about measuring success and the impact. So, you know, do you measure, and have you got any thoughts that you can give to people who want to measure success for their sustainability initiatives? Christophe, do you want to start?
Yeah,
Christophe's got the best scorecard. I'm so jealous of it, by the way.
I don't know if it's the best one, but we're trying to make it real indeed. I mean, first of all, as I mentioned earlier, is to engage everybody into it. So do we measure it? Yes, we make it very concretely, very tangible, very simple for everybody to understand. Decarbonization, the number of suppliers that we audit with solving all of the non-conformities, the overall performance score with ISO 26000, the decent work, the percentage of strategic suppliers that provide decent work, and I can go on. I mean, the percentage of green material included in our product. So extremely concrete, and make it tangible for people that they see how they can act on it. And that is very critical. That's number one. Number two, it's making applicable to all of the employees in your community. For us in procurement, that is critical. And then make sure to keep yourself honest on it by publishing the results, by reviewing the results, by speaking it, and I'm insisting on that at the beginning of the meeting when you review the scorecard, not at the end, at the beginning of the QBR, not at the end. Do the same with your suppliers. Don't start discussing about an issue you just had. Start to discuss about sustainability, how good or not good they're doing on their different applicable sustainability metrics they have. I would say this is what I saw in Schneider Electric have been working.
Lovely. Thanks, Christophe. And because, I mean, obviously, Chartered Institute Procurement Supply, and I know we've still got 4 minutes, is it important to upskill people? Amanda, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And for me, this is really important. We shouldn't take for granted that our people know how to consider sustainability as part of the entire procurement life cycle, right from bids, building in scoring criteria through to, embedding it as part of the supply management process, etc., and seeing out that value through life of the contract. And so it's really important that we have an upskilling package. So at BAE, this year, we are working to upskill all of our procurement professionals, and CIPS are helping us with that. So it's a slight little plug for CIPS because I'm really pleased by the work that you guys are helping us with. But we are mapping the standard procurement life cycle through the framework and saying at every part of this, at every stage, what should we consider? Now, that doesn't mean we choose to do something about it, but what are the things we should think about through a sustainability lens? Because it's far easier to do this real time. It's far harder to do this retrospectively. So you go through the whole process, you get on contract, and then you've got to try and build sustainability, and that's really tricky. And so I would just encourage everybody to set your people up for success by giving them the skills and the knowledge that they need to be able to consider sustainability alongside, time, cost, and quality. Because you don't want a sustainability expert doing this off to one side. You want the people who have that relationship with the supplier to be doing this as confidently as they talk about value, as confidently as they talk about delivery performance. So yeah, I'm really grateful for the work that we're doing to help do the mapping and then upskill our people, Ian. So thank you for that.
You're more than welcome, Amanda. Thank you very much. So we've literally got about 2 minutes. I've just been looking to see if we've got any sort of final questions. I mean, everybody is loving the whole thing about evolution, not revolution, which I think is really important. There's been some really positive comments about the session, which I love. There's a real thing about building a community of like-minded people, and I think you're already here. There is a community here and waiting for you. So please make use of that. I think last comment, Christophe, last thing you'd like to say, and then the last comment, Amanda, and then we're going to call it a day. So Christophe.
I would say start now. Don't wait. Don't hide behind anything, any excuses. Every little steps will contribute in making this world a better one for us.
Amazing. Thanks, Christophe. Amanda, last comment?
Yeah. Take that first step. Do something. Everybody can do something that's going to make a difference and going to get us to where we need to go. So please just do something.
Perfect. Excellent. So lovely meeting you all. You know where we are. Please reach out to us if you need to. Love chatting to you all, and thank you for your wonderful questions and your chats. It really makes for a great session when we get lots of questions and lots of chat. So thank you very much for everything. and
Thank you.
enjoy the rest of the day. I think it's an amazing initiative, and enjoy it. So goodbye for now.
Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Christophe and Ian.
Yeah, bye bye. Thank you. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks.